Space, the infinite void, where no one can hear you scream. Probably due to the lack of oxygen and screaming nut jobs. Today, I'll be talking about the original Dead Space. I'll be going over what Dead Space is about, my thoughts on the game, and some tips to help you get through it. I'm Mr. J, and Horizontal Plasma Cutter Gang for the win. The survival horror game Dead Space puts you in the heavy metal boots of Isaac Clarke, an engineer who is going up to the USG Ishimura, a planet-cracking vessel, to assist with the technical difficulties of the ship, and to meet up with his girlfriend Nicole. Of course, with this being a horror game, everything goes sideways, with their ship grounded and the rest of the crew turned into crushed tomatoes, leaving only Isaac, Chief Security Officer Zach Hammond, and computer technician Kendra Daniels. Their situation looks pretty bleak. Armed with only some mining equipment and the duo providing a steady stream of information, Isaac begins a search around the Ishimura for both Nicole and the answers to why these creatures, the necromorphs, have overrun the ship. As for my thoughts on the game, I loved romping around the Ishimura as much as everyone else who got to the end did. But I had a few problems while drifting around through Dead Space. For starters, I pulled a cardinal sin of the horror game genre. I turned up the brightness. Alright, let me explain. I, for one, enjoy the ambiance of darkness, and letting the fear of the unknown grip my heart. The problem is there's a clear difference between spending half an hour in the dark making progress while not freaking out, and spending half an hour fumbling around in the dark and not knowing what I'm doing or where I'm going. I'm not doing this to make the game less fun. I'm doing this so I can see where I'm going. Next, I can see what my friends and the internet meant about the turret section in the original game. So imagine this scenario. There are 2 turret sections in the entire game. Both involve different circumstances, but have the same principal problem. You have to hit small, fast-moving targets with pinpoint accuracy while also keeping an eye on your health. I got through the sections on my 3rd try, but my problem was that I had to focus on so many asteroids coming from so many different angles that it wasn't fun. I'm here to freak out at the necromorphs and revel in my success in beating the game. I'm not here to get sucker punched in the gut by a major difficulty spike and spend 15 minutes of my day stewing over space debris. Lastly, I don't know if anyone else had this thought, but I wasn't a fan of the oxygen-deprived sections. In my eyes, it would have been more intense and heart-pounding to not fight necromorphs in the vacuum of space, but the timer on my back while looking for the next progression point and save station. The best way I can say it is that I wasn't really afraid of those sections. More the feeling like it was a chore and not a matter of life and death. I only felt real fear in the crew cabin section because I was scrambling to find an item to progress, while also remembering how many O2 cans I had and where the refill tank was while I was carefully combing through the cabin. In other words, if I had to do a puzzle or complete an objective while hopping around the Ishimura while constantly keeping an eye on my oxygen, I would have taken more care in stocking up on O2 cans and keeping track of the refill stations. Those elements of the game weren't perfect, but fortunately, they didn't take away from the positives. I enjoyed the atmosphere of Dead Space. I have to give it to Glen Schofield and the entire team. They set out to make a survival horror experience for the ages, and they knocked it out of the park. The music would rise and fall at just the right times, creating the feeling of suspense and terror, or the eerie silence between Isaac and the Ishimura. As well, you don't have a traditional heads-up display or ammo counter on screen, so it relies on you watching Isaac's rig and constantly checking your weapons to make sure you have enough health and ammo. And finally, the USG Ishimura is a character in all of this as well. Wherever that tram takes you aboard that planet-cracking vessel, it feels cold and depressing. Regardless of where you go, everywhere aboard the Ishimura is covered in metal plating, and it just feels bleak and lifeless. I felt like I was in a cramped, creaky metal tub moments away from demise at every turn, and I didn't regret a single moment of it. I also enjoyed the overarching story of Dead Space. In horror games, the trend I notice is that things start out relatively normal in the world the characters are in. Then, as you progress through the story, the
thing we found or created is becoming a nightmarish abomination, and it wasn't in our best interests to poke it with a stick to see what happens.
Part of the story bubbles up through text and audio logs. At that point, it's a mental jigsaw puzzle of understanding how the events unfolded and how it deeply affected the people involved with the incident. Dead Space presents you with text and audio logs of the crew slowly but gradually losing their minds to the threat of the necromorphs, and either becoming one of them or passing away to avoid becoming one. It's an unsettling but rich B-plot that just adds to the unease and fear of the game. And lastly, I don't know why I found it funny, but I was giggling at the store every time I went to it. It's like the unlucky folks are mutating into hideous piles of reanimated flesh and trying to dice you into meat cubes, while the lucky few who haven't turned into necromorphs are either insane or want Isaac in a body bag. So as you're dicing up angry space zombies, trying to keep your head on your shoulders, and finding some straight answers to your situation, you are bound by the laws of capitalism. Yeah, the Ishimura is falling apart. The people aboard are either lifeless bodies, mutated husks, or a few notes short of a musical score, and you're expected to pony up some cash for supplies. I know the added aspect of needing to manage your funds for supplies is a necessity for the survival portion, but I can't get over how silly my one thought sounds out loud.
Yes, I know we're in a life and death emergency, but you still need to pay me money.
Alright, I'll now be going over some information and tips to assist you in getting to the end of the game. Keep in mind though, I played through the original Dead Space, not the 2023 remake, so I don't know how much was changed or kept the same. I was playing on normal difficulty, and I was only using the plasma cutter. So take everything I'm going to say right now with a grain of salt. First up, your rig. The monitoring device on Isaac's back is what you'll be upgrading. Don't hesitate to buy new armor. That mitigates the damage. Your rig upgrades, however, aren't affected. As well, upgrade stasis every so often. Every extra second you have to prune necromorph limbs is another second you'll stay alive. Keep a power node or two on you at all times. They're both used to upgrade your equipment and open locked doors aboard the Ishimura. The locked doors usually have ammo, health, and sellable items behind them. I kept a minimum of 2 on me at all times. You can never be too safe in a survival horror game. I don't know about the other weapons, I didn't touch them, but the plasma cutter is your best friend. Set it to horizontal, aim at the groin on most necromorphs, and you'll be saving ammo and slicing twice the limbs. I ran through the whole game with a fully upgraded plasma cutter, and that's how I had fun. Don't reload and heal when you're upgrading your ammo capacity, health, or stasis. When you upgrade one of those 3 things, it tops off whatever you upgraded. That way, you'll save the credits for more nodes, med packs, stasis cells, or ammo. Save whenever you can. Trust me, regardless of the difficulty, going through half an hour to an hour of progress, only to have lost it to a legless space zombie is not how one would want to spend a Saturday afternoon. Unless you are not able to save for some reason, save when there's an available station near you. Lastly, stay vigilant and pay attention. The moment you aren't keeping an eye on Isaac and your surroundings is the moment it's game over. I unfortunately learned that lesson the hard way. To finish this segment off, I would like to say I didn't include these to take away from the experience of playing the game, but to provide aid. In my opinion, this is here so if you're inclined to play, you aren't wasting your time on internet forums looking for an answer. You're using the little pieces of advice I left here to make the journey with a clear conscience. Dead Space isn't for everyone. If you're not into survival horror, being jump scared here and there, or having shambling piles of flesh running towards you, I completely understand. The term of fun is different for everyone across the board. If anything I said tickles your fancy, then Dead Space is right up your alley. As I explained earlier in the video, I was playing the original Dead Space, not the remake. So take everything I say with a grain of salt. But if any of the knowledge here translates over to the remake, then use it. It's a tool. If you happen to think back on my video while you're playing the game, just remember to prune a few necromorphs for my sake. I'm Mr. J, telling you to have a day.